Back again. So for this session, I'm going to talk a little bit about OneNote Class Notebook, which is probably my favourite app of all for working with students, and it's because it's a very diverse app and you can do an awful lot with it. So what I was going to, I suppose, touch on a couple of things today is a little bit of explaining what it is. So OneNote Class Notebook, I always think, is the equivalent of having a whiteboard, a filing cabinet, and every single student's copy all in one place, because that's fundamentally what it is. It's a place where students can collaborate, but I can keep resources that are read-only, and each student has a specific space where they can work. So what we're going to explore today is a little bit about how it can be your whiteboard that never has to be rubbed out if you've got a touchscreen device, how we can, I suppose, we can add in rich multimedia experiences for students, but even something as simple as adding in like a little audio note to explain what students have to do or whatever, and that there are simple methods for distributing and assessing student work. So during the break, I suppose, got a little bit of a better understanding of how this works in terms of your context. But for each of your classes, you have a Moodle group, and that automatically creates your team, which is good to know, because that does not a lot of the work for you, but what it does is enable you to go in and choose Class Notebook. And that will then set up a Class Notebook for you and for each of your students in it. And when you go to create one, you can set up a blank one, or you can use one that is made before, if you're looking to reuse it or recopy the content over. Now, personally, I've always found that it's easier to bring sections over a little at a time for my students, but it might depend on your class and your context. So the Class Notebook is always found in your teams, and you can use it to create this OneNote environment. I will say is, yes, there is OneNote outside of this, which is not Class Notebook, and that doesn't have the link for your students. So if you're looking in Office 365, you might see OneNote. That is not the place to go to create it if you're looking to create one that your students can access. You want to do that through Teams, mainly because it saves you an awful lot of work, but also because it'll be able to integrate and work within Teams, and you can use it to if you wanted to create the assignment for formative assessment, it'll work in that space. So the way it works is a little bit like, the way I feel it works is, if you remember the LeverArch folders with your tabs, the best way, that's the easiest way for me describing it. You have in your content library, you can add different sections, and they're the coloured little icons there, and that's a bit like your LeverArch, folder area. And then within each one of them, we can add individual pages. So in terms of organisation, it's really useful for our students, I've found, because they're they can quickly identify, I want a section on the syllabus, and then they'll click on that tab and they'll see all the related pages to it. And it's very easy for me as a teacher to simply click add section or add tab to create more as and when I want. This is looking at it in through Teams. It does work on its own, as in it is accessible without going through Teams, but when you make it for the very first time, as I said, it's far easier for you if you do it through Teams. But you don't always have to look at it in this way, and it has a much narrower viewpoint. For me, a couple of things that I particularly like is it has the dictation function that's there that I've mentioned already to support students. It has the immersive reader functionality built into this as well. So it's a highly accessible environment for me and for my students to work in. And it also has that whiteboard functionality. So as I said, that content library is where we can access all the resources that are reference materials that students might be using, but there is a specific dedicated area for collaboration. So that collaboration space, absolutely everyone can write in it. So if I put a task in there, it might be just like a starter, or you're trying to assess what people already know. Every single student can access that. So it's a great place for that initial brainstorming, but you can also edit that, so you can put groups in there, and only the members of group 1, for example, can work in that dedicated space. And that is done through Managed Class Notebook. But that collaboration space is a great place for group work and general kind of brainstorming. And absolutely everyone can work in that together. I will say, because this does work with teams, and I did mention assignments before, it won't be able to see the collaboration space there because it isn't assigned to one particular student. So I suppose just to caution that. And then beneath the content library is the student sections. So this is a dedicated student copybook, effectively, that the students can work in, and the educator can choose what's there. So it might be something like class notes or homework, or it could be something like you might want to have a reflective area for each student, but you can generate the name of them tabs that they can work in. And the nice thing for us as educators is we can see everyone's without physically having to, look for handouts or anything like that. It's all present in there. So that's kind of an overview of what it looks like with 3 specific areas. I personally really like it because I'm a maths teacher. So I like it because I can digitally ink on it. So I can use this as a whiteboard that I'll never rub out, because you often find you might go through something, you might write it up, and then you come back in the next day and it's gone. Or you've had stuff and you've had to annotate it just to aid with the student's explanation. Sometimes annotations are kind of overlays, they're not living, they're almost like that image over it. One of the really nice things about OneNote is they're living inkings. So we can annotate images that are in it, we can just generally use it as a whiteboard, but it's there and I can access it time and time again. And equally, the students can access all these annotations. So unlike something maybe where you've uploaded PowerPoint and it's kind of in that read-only doc format that when you uploaded it first, as you've annotated this in OneNote, the students will also be able to see it. Specifically, a really nice functionality, just to point this out, is on the View tab. In the right-hand corner, you'll just see there's a replay button. So if you've done a lot of inking, you can simply hit the replay button, highlight the area, and it'll replay it. So if you're explaining a process to the students, you can simply hit replay and it will go through it again, and you can simply just, I suppose, narrate it for them. So it's really powerful, I think, in that sense, because it saves times, and you can also pause the replays as you want, and you can pause them and, ask what do we do next, get the students' feedback. But that is found, as I said, on the View tab in the top right-hand corner, but really useful for you and for your students, that they can replay any inkings that you've done, so that they can work through the process if they're using it at home as well. So if they're trying to follow along at home, it is really, really useful. Looking at kind of studies that were carried out in 2015, looking at the benefits of the digital linking, it's shown that it saves times, it can provide authentic feedback. So one of the options, and we'll touch on it in just a second, is that the students can take a picture of their work. So, they can upload something that they have drawn, and then you can annotate it when you're giving them their feedback. So obviously that's much easier than, I find it much faster than typing it, but also you can also kind of supplement it with some other features, and it also helps with creating that personalised learning environment for our students, and is shown to have fewer barriers to learning and promote engagement. So I suppose all of these really mean that annotating, inking, what your existing resources can be, really provide that bespoke learning experience for your students. And I suppose within that as well, we can annotate, we can ink, but one of the things I truly love about it is we can embed so many different medias into it. So and I know tomorrow you're doing a lot around UDL, but when we're looking at multiple means of representation, that we have options to embed video into it. You can record, you can literally narrate a lecture if you wanted for them, and the students can access that at home. All of them are possible through the Insert tab. So in the Insert tab, you can insert pictures, different media, as well as, now that's just a YouTube video, but it's just showing an indication if you're looking at promoting kind of multiple means of engagement. It's very possible to do in OneNote. And you can see there, and again, obviously slightly different context, but it was looking at wave-cut platforms, but in this case, there was a video for them to watch, there was an article for them to read, or there was a podcast for them to listen. So what's nice, I find, is that students are all going to one individual place, and then they can choose the means that works the best for them. Now, you have to do the due diligence and make sure that they're all equally as good as each other, but in terms of that is something that can be carried out over a period of time, not on one specific day. So in that case as well, I found it very, very useful for working with students. And when we're looking at smaller pieces of work, such as this case, it can also be used to distribute the work to the students for them to do, and then it's very easy for you to review the student work. So on the Class Notebook tab, there is a distribute page, and that magically, I shouldn't say magically, but it sends it into every student's copy. So you know that when they click on it, they will see this page, they will have their list of tasks for them to do, and they can simply do their work. And as I said, there is that camera feature on the Insert tab, and they can take a picture of something that they've physically made or physically drawn, and they can upload it there for you to come along and click the review student work, and then you can see what the students have done. And you can annotate it, you can leave audio feedback or provide written feedback. And another nice thing is that we can use the dictate function ourselves to type out our feedback for us. So in terms of trying to save a little bit of time, these I found are particularly useful. And also you can see that Reflect app that I've mentioned a minute ago is also present in Class Notebook. So you can also ask the students how do they feel about the material that they've covered. You can gain that insight so that you can ensure that they're feeling comfortable with their work. So in these cases, I find it kind of the one-stop shop app. Now, that's my personal preference, but this is my main teaching tool. It might be something that you might like to trial and have a go with it and see how your students find it. There is a little bit of a learning curve, but what I will say is, for me, I try and reinforce the idea that if they've used PowerPoint or Word or any of the other apps, they'll find the same file, home, insert, draw tabs. So it's trying to create the connections to what they're already using can help with their understanding and their getting to know the application. Because fundamentally, once they kind of break down the little bit of, I won't say it's fear, but if they've never encountered the app before, it can seem quite different because they're not physically going to save. This is automatically saving as they're creating. So that kind of comfort blanket of going to file, going to save, putting in the name, that's not needed anymore because that's built in. So sometimes students find that a little bit disconcerting, I would say. But once they start to develop it, for that reason, it can become very useful as well because it auto saves, and it probably doesn't happen in ATU, but I find is they forget to save, and it's the original version that they worked on 3 days ago on their device, and then they're still trying to say, is there any way we can retrieve it if it crashes or something? But in that sense, it's very useful. And it does link to Teams, which I suppose Teams assignments, it's not something that you may be using, but you have the option to link it to Teams and give the students the rubrics as well that we've just mentioned. So, you can choose to create assignments, you can integrate that with it, so using that attached paperclip, one of the options is Class Notebook, and you can simply select the page you're working on, and you can give it to the students with kind of the rubrics that we've already mentioned, the video instructions, and the timelines, or the due dates and the calendaring that is possible. I personally like it, but it might be a newer app for some people. But it's worth having a go with, I feel, because it creates a really engaging and accessible experience for your students. But I don't know if you've any questions about it, because I don't know if I've sold it as well as I should be. I shouldn't say sold it, but like, to me, it's my favourite app of them all. So,
Thanks, Karen, that was really interesting. And just to say, I think a lot of people found it very useful during the pandemic. I think they found it very useful in higher ed as well. And a lot of people did use it for their students. And again, like that, it allowed them to give engagement and feedback, whether it was video or whether it was, audio. So I know a lot of our colleagues did use that. So thanks for sharing. Sorry, somebody else had a question.
No worries. Yeah, I agree. I haven't used it in depth myself, but I've seen other colleagues using it really well. But the question I was just wondering, because what I was trying to do with it one time was to get students collaborating, but not all the class. So I wanted them in pairs or in groups collaborating, and I don't know if Class Notebook was the best, or if I should have just been using OneNote and create separate OneNotes for them.
There is, maybe this is, if I wasn't demoing, I can show you, because in Office.com as such, one of the icons, it looks like OneNote, but it's called Class Notebook. And if you select that, you can manage your class notebooks, but in the collaboration space, you can create specific areas for specific people to work on. So you can have your group work, you can have 4 different groups in the collaboration space, and only they can work there.
On each sheet. Like they have a sheet each.
Yeah,
perfect.
So, and they can add more as they want. But you as the educator, you can see them all, and you can leave it that it's even view only for the other groups, so they could see what's going on or not. You have that option, but I can show you that in a second, but it's just, so I'm not demoing here. It's just in Office. It's a Class Notebook, that's the name of the icon, and then you can manage your notebook, and within that you can manage the collaboration space and do it through that way. And that's very nice because they're all working on the one place as well. So it's possible.
Just to add there as well, on Moodle, you can create groups on Moodle, but you can also create a team based on that group. So like I mentioned Karen previously, so you have a team for each of your modules, but if you create, let's say, group A, B, C, and D, or whatever, you can create a team for that group, so you call the module plus whatever you title it, so let's say group A, and you could actually have a whole team for a group, if that makes sense. So you can create a separate class notebook to the classes, if that makes sense.
Okay,
So
if you were really going to use it regularly, I guess.
I'll pop the video in the chat to the short form of the video.
I was wondering if a student deleted a page by accident, can they recover that?
So there's a recycle bin. There's a recycle bin as well in Class Notebook. So a bit like when you restore.
So it's easy for them to do that, or walk back if they've made some changes within.
Yeah, and there's the undo as you normally have within like Word and stuff as well.
It's the kind of walked off
Walked off and you're back. No, there's a recycle bin for the individual notebooks, and you can restore pages that you have accidentally deleted. And because it's cloud-based as well, you can walk the entire thing back, if that makes sense, to a point as well.
What's the space limit per student?
That is probably down to your organisation, if that makes sense. So that is adaptable and changeable, but it's dependent on because it's cloud-based and storage-based, that's something controlled by the organisation. It is something actually, and it's probably a good point, it is something to be conscious of. Like I would never, maybe I'm overstating it, but like I'd never put in a 750 megabyte attachment in this, because that's huge storage in absolutely every single person's device. but that's where like I put a link to it in OneDrive and let them, or put it in Teams files and something. But it is something to be conscious of that, you know, if it's very large, I just put in a link to something else rather than put the entire documentary in or something.
But you can embed files as well, you can embed videos
Yeah.
into it, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can embed videos and whole heaps of stuff, like there's a whole host of different apps as well that you can embed directly into it. But I suppose it's just being conscious of if you can have actual files located in this as well that students can interact in, but I suppose I'd always just be conscious of size because obviously they're downloading this or whatever, because they can access this on their phone or their laptops or wherever. I wouldn't like it to be too big, if that makes sense.
It's great potential for laboratory notebooks,
Yeah,
because you can embed the videos in each one of the steps. If it's a 10-step process, you could have a video for each step.
Yeah.
But that video lives on YouTube, but they have it accessible
yeah,
in a coherent playlist, for want of a better expression, on their phone.
yeah.
Yeah, we did that actually. Well, I'm a big fan, but I know the maths lecturers in ATU where we all use OneNote because it really does lend itself very well to maths and typing. And these guys were exposed to it this year and endured it, and I think they're fans of it probably. We use the collaboration space, you know, where they did teamwork, and we also use, like for me, definitely the distributing the page.
Yeah.
We all did our journal work, and then you can jump in at any point to see where a student is at. We did manage to link it back to Moodle, so they were able to create a PDF of the OneNote
Yeah.
page, upload it to Moodle, and then we use the peer assessment there, so we built it into the assessment system that we have. But Stream also embeds really nicely in it, like, so that meant that the student didn't have to go out to YouTube, they could just watch a video and then do their own bit of work, you know, so it's all, like CJ was saying, in one place, you know. But I would say there's a bit of a steep learning curve, and I know when I went to it first, I backed away from it, and the first time I used it with students, they were like, oh, what are you doing to us? But now I wouldn't be without it, and I suppose it's just one of those things that if you stick with it, the reusability is huge, so every year you just have all that content available, and all that's changing really are the students that you add through your teams and through Moodle, so that. And like that then, there's like, because of the collaboration space, we were able to share each other's work, like even the Make Code editor sits in it, so students can test the simulator and do all that kind of stuff. So like there is huge potential for it, and I suppose just as an end user, I just wanted to say that to kind of endorse it. It is worth putting in the effort and the time, I think, to learn how to use it.
Yeah, because I do feel once you get your head around it, just the way of the organisation, it's so much easier, I suppose. It's not as intimidating then.
Yeah, and I think having a few peers as well, I think we were lucky, like I know Claire and Eva in engineering and Trish and a few of us, we were all able to bounce off each other as well, you know, that if we got stuck, or like even if a student lost something, the panic, you know, you could ask a friend as well, so it's nice to have that.
There is a great feature in it as well, where when you cut and paste something from a website, it remembers the URL where you put it from, which is great. And I know at one stage Microsoft were talking about putting a text matching feature into their tool, so an equivalent of Turnitin, but in the Microsoft tool, so it will actually do a text match analysis on it as well in all the Microsoft tools. I'm not sure where that is.
I don't know if that is there quite yet.
It's coming. If it's not there quite yet, it's coming.
Yeah, and there's lots of little things you can do, like you can set your page colours, you can have your rule lines, like all of that is possible, as well as like the translation feature. I know it's great out there, but again, we talked about students that might be coming from another country. They can simply translate the entire page into their native language and use that support as well. So again, it should help to provide that kind of accessible environment, but fundamentally they can do that independently, so they're not going to be relying on, you know, extra support from you, well, other than the natural kind of support you'd be giving them, but it's great in that sense as well. That's about it for me.
Sorry, Karen, we just have one more question.
Oh, yeah.
There was a late joiner on Teams, and they just wanted to know, what is your experience of using assessment features on OneNote?
So for formative assessment, I love it, mainly because of the distributed. You can send it out to them. The students can do their work, even if it's in a copybook, they can take a picture, just take a picture of it, and then I can click review and I can see everyone's work. So I can simply go down like Tom, Mary, Sarah, like whatever, I'll just work down through it. So very quick, very time efficient. And because I can annotate what they've done, if it's an image, I can provide kind of, I suppose, meaningful feedback specifically relevant to that. So if you get what I mean, if where that purple learning intentions cursor is, I could like circle it and go, well, you need to add this there, but it's not in the feedback box, or it's not away from it, it's directly on top of the work that the student is doing. But also, because you can insert an audio note, you can drop in a little audio note explaining where they've gone wrong, and it's very much like you're there at home beside them going, well, look at that now, you can see there that you forgot to, it could be like maths teacher, you're making a repeated error with signs, but you're giving them that little prompt as well. So in that sense, I like it for assessment. Yeah, as I said, this is my number one teaching tool, but I know I'm coming from a different setting, but I like it for that reason.
Right, thanks.